I posted this as a reason why God drove out the nations that were in the land before the nation of Israel. This person, Mothman, said, "Why has God not taken me out?" I said, "I think you have God mixed up with the one you serve." And he asked the question again, "Why haven't I been taken out?" I see two answers. One is pretty straightforward. God is patient. Even those that were so evil, worshiping demons in the land that the nation of Israel was going to take from them, God said to Abraham, "I'm going to give your descendants this land," where Abraham was standing at the time, "but not yet, because the evil of the Amorites has not reached its fullness." In other words, there was no way when those people stood before God they would have any excuse. God gave them every opportunity to give up the worship of demons. After the kingdom of Israel split into two nations, the nation of Israel and the nation of Judah, the nation of Israel just went from bad to worse, and God had the Assyrians carry them away and they never returned. But God had a promise to David, and therefore, when the nation of Judah went bad, God had them carried off, but only temporarily, and promised that in 7 years they would come back. And that happened. But during their decline, consider King Manasseh. He was horrible. You want to see how bad he was? Just read these verses. Yet God allowed him to reign for 55 years. Nonetheless, the kingdom of Judah was punished. They were carried off into Babylon, and in the process of that, some really bad things happened. In Psalm 137, one of the guys who was carried off reminisces about what happened to him in Jerusalem by the Babylonians. And Psalm 137:9, he's wishing revenge on the Babylonians, that the same thing that they did to the Judeans would happen to them. God is patient. It is not his desire that any should perish, but that all come to him.
Check out what God had to say about himself in Revelation 22. God said, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end." Come on, God has no weaknesses, right? God never gets tired or distracted, and God never needs a break. God doesn't get sick, he doesn't get overwhelmed, and he never has too much on his plate. Where other friends might forget about you, God will never stop thinking about you. He will never stop pulling for you and pursuing you, and he will never stop loving you. We cannot outrun him, outwork him, outsmart him, or outgive him. He is above all things and below all things and before all things, and in him all things are held together. He is the highest and the greatest and the strongest and the truest and the wisest and the purest and the kindest. Come on. He is the most holy, the most patient, the most gracious, the most wise, the most compassionate, the most kind, and the most loving. He is perfect in every way. He is everything you need and nothing that you don't. I wish I could start to describe him for you, but we are not peers, right? We're not peers. And yet, we are invited, you are invited into friendship with God. No matter what your life looks like, no matter what you have going on, no matter what situation you're facing, you are invited into friendship with that kind of God.
But in Psalm 50, he tells us that his patience should not be misinterpreted for complacency. Disregard of him will be punished eventually. But another answer is that God sees a much bigger picture. He not only sees the past and the present, he sees the future. He knows what's going to happen. Who knows? You may live an evil life, and during your evil life, you have a son who lives an evil life, and during his evil life, he has a son who comes to repentance and becomes a great reformer, like another Billy Graham. And God is preserving your life for that purpose. I mean, we can get ridiculous. You may have a son who steps in front of an assassination attempt and takes a bullet for some national or international leader that is critical in the history of mankind. God knows all of that, and we don't. God is all powerful and uses everyone and everything to accomplish his purpose. God is also patient, but he is not complacent. It's appointed unto man once to die, and then the judgment. And the judgment will come. It will.